If there were an award for the most amorous yet sorrowful emperor, Han Wudi would undoubtedly take the crown. He was not only a political genius and a war god who expanded the Han dynasty's territory but also a true romantic with a love life full of both passion and heartbreak. Some of his romances were so sweet they could melt hearts, while others were so tragic they could bring tears, and indeed, he did shed tears. From Chen Ajiao, to whom he once promised a golden house but later abandoned, to Wei Zifu, who rose from a palace maid to empress only to meet a bitter end, and then to Lady Li, the woman Han Wudi regretted losing for the rest of his life. Each of these love stories forms a royal romance anthology. If adapted into a drama, it would undoubtedly be a long-running palace intrigue series with sky-high ratings. Chen Ajiao, The Promise of a Golden House, and the Sudden Plot Twist. If there were an award for the top 10 most romantic promises that ended like a horror movie, the story of Emperor Wu of Han and Chen Ajiao would surely take first place. Chen Ajiao was the daughter of Princess Guantao, making her an exceptionally powerful noblewoman. Born into luxury, she was basically the rich kid of the Han dynasty. Beautiful, intelligent, and with an unmatched family background, she was the type of daughter-in-law every mother-in-law would dream of. From a young age, she was betrothed to Liu Che, a handsome and talented prince who, at the time, was still just a young man waiting for his moment. Their love story began like a fairy tale, especially when Liu Che made a promise that would make any young girl envious. If I become emperor one day, I will build a golden house for you to live in. Sounds romantic, doesn't it? That one sentence later became one of the most legendary love declarations in Chinese history. And true to his word, when Liu Che ascended the throne, the first thing he did was make Chen Ajiao his empress. It seemed like the perfect marriage, destined for happiness. But then, it wasn't. After ascending the throne, Emperor Wu of Han suddenly realized that having such a vast harem but only one empress felt like a waste. Though he had loved Chen Ajiao since childhood, he soon found that a monogamous life was, frankly, a bit boring. And then came a serious problem: Ajiao couldn't bear a child. For an emperor eager to strengthen his rule and secure an heir, this was nothing short of a devastating blow. And so, Ajiao's life took a dramatic turn, one filled with tears and heartbreak. At first, Emperor Wu simply became a little distant, but then, as the age-old rule of palace love goes, when the new one arrives, the old one is cast aside. Beautiful women began entering the palace, including Wei Zifu, a girl with no noble background but an uncanny ability to captivate the emperor. Slowly, Emperor Wu completely ignored Ajiao, to the point where he didn't even bother to look at her. So, ladies, take note, never blindly trust a man's promises, especially if that man holds power. Watching herself being neglected, Chen Ajiao was absolutely furious. She was an empress, a woman of noble birth and immense power. How could she tolerate seeing her husband chasing after a bunch of palace maids? No way. Determined to win back the emperor's heart, she took action. But instead of using charm or playing subtle tricks like the other concubines, Ajiao took jealousy to an imperial level. She constantly made trouble for the emperor's favorites, insulting them, causing scenes, and throwing tantrums. She even used her power to oppress and sabotage the very women her husband adored. And what had to happen, happened. Emperor Wu got fed up. From love and affection, his feelings for Chen Ajiao gradually turned into complete indifference. After enduring it for some time, Emperor Wu finally reached his limit. In 130 BCE, he made a drastic decision. He deposed Ajiao from her position as empress and banished her to the cold palace. For a woman of such noble status, falling from the pinnacle of power to utter isolation was nothing short of a catastrophic downfall. The woman who was once promised a golden house was now forced to live out her days in loneliness, forgotten, abandoned, and left with no one to care for her. A love story that had once resembled a fairy tale had now turned into a tragic palace drama. Years later, when Emperor Wu grew old, he began reminiscing about the past. He suddenly found himself missing Ajiao. Well, after years of indulging in his harem, perhaps he finally realized how heartless he had been in his youth. Seeking redemption, he pardoned Ajiao, released her from the cold palace, and granted her the title of Princess of Chang. It was a belated compensation for all she had suffered, but better late than never. Men in their youth are often careless, only to regret it when they are old. If only he had cherished her earlier, there would have been no tragedy. But sadly, people only seem to realize the value of something after losing it, a timeless truth of love. The love story of Chen Ajiao and Emperor Wu of Han became one of the most famous romantic tragedies in Chinese history. The Promise of a Golden House? In the end, it became nothing more than a bittersweet legend within the palace walls. Wei Zifu, from palace maid to empress, but a tragic end. If there were a competition for the greatest comebacks in palace history, Wei Zifu would undoubtedly be among the top contenders. A mere palace maid with no status suddenly rising to become empress, it was a twist of fate that left everyone speechless. But life is never a fairy tale. The higher you rise, the harder you fall. And her story is one of the most vivid examples of that harsh reality. Imagine this: one ordinary day, you are nothing more than an unnoticed maid working in the palace, sweeping floors, serving tea, doing menial tasks. You're not particularly remarkable, except for having a pleasant face. Then, out of nowhere, a single dance performance changes your entire destiny. That was the story of Wei Zifu. She was just an ordinary palace maid, serving in the household of Princess Pingyang, the elder sister of Emperor Wu of Han. One day, during a grand banquet, she was called to sing and dance for entertainment. Who could have guessed that at that very moment, Emperor Wu would fall for her at first sight? This must have been infuriating for the many noble ladies in the palace, high-born women from prestigious families who had been waiting in vain to catch the emperor's eye. And yet, a mere palace maid had managed to steal his heart. After that fateful night, Wei Zifu was no longer just a maid, she officially became the emperor's most favored consort. There's a famous saying, to keep a man's heart, beauty alone is not enough, you must give him children. And Wei Zifu understood this perfectly. In just a short time, she gave birth to 4 children for Emperor Wu. At that time, the previous empress, Chen Ajiao, had not yet been deposed, but she was childless. This severely weakened her position, while Wei Zifu continued to gain favor. Eventually, Emperor Wu grew tired of Ajiao, stripped her of her title, and elevated Wei Zifu to the position of empress. From an unknown palace maid to the mother of the empire, with 4 princes as her strongest support, Wei Zifu's rise was nothing short of legendary. Her story is proof of a powerful saying: a beautiful woman can change her fate, but a beautiful and intelligent woman can rule the world. For over 30 years, she held her position as empress securely, with no one able to shake her authority. During her reign, the imperial harem remained relatively peaceful, without the bloody power struggles often seen in palace dramas. Her life seemed almost too perfect. But unfortunately, fate is always unpredictable. After many years with Wei Zifu, Emperor Wu began to grow bored. Powerful men never seemed to know when to stop. He turned his attention to younger, more beautiful concubines, most notably Lady Go Yi, a stunning, charming woman who knew exactly how to capture the emperor's heart. By then, Wei Zifu was no longer young, and even the princes she had given birth to were no longer the emperor's favorites. As time passed, she was gradually pushed out of the emperor's world. She had once believed her position was secure, but fate had other plans. Disaster struck when her son, Crown Prince Lu Ju, was caught up in a rebellion plot. In a moment of panic and fury, Emperor Wu ordered a ruthless massacre of everyone involved, including Wei Zifu herself. With nowhere left to turn, the once beloved empress found herself branded a criminal. After being imprisoned for some time, the humiliation and despair became too much to bear. In the end, Wei Zifu took her own life, bringing one of the most tragic palace stories to a heartbreaking close. The emperor's favor is the most fleeting thing in the world, easy to gain, but even easier to lose. One moment, you're standing at the peak of power, the next, you're falling into the abyss. If a drama were ever made about Wei Zifu's life, it would certainly be titled, From Romance Novel Heroine to Tragic Supporting Character. Ladyley, A Love Too Late, Full of Regret. If there were a contest for the woman an emperor regretted losing the most, Ladyley would undoubtedly take the crown. She never fought for power, schemed, or played palace games, yet she captured Emperor Wu's heart in her own unique way. Unfortunately, their love came too late, only to end in a painful farewell. Unlike the noble ladies of the court, Ladyley was not born into a prestigious family. Her brother, Li Yannian, was a talented court musician, famous for his songwriting and performances. And as we all know, if you don't have status but have a talented, well-connected sibling, fate might still smile upon you. During a grand banquet, Li Yannian performed a song with poetic lyrics that enchanted the audience. In the north, there is a beauty, peerless and standing alone. One glance can topple a city, another glance can overthrow a kingdom. In the north, there is a beauty, so breathtaking, none can compare. One glance topples a city, another glance shakes a kingdom. Yes, a single song stirred the emperor's heart. Upon hearing it, Emperor Wu immediately asked, "Who is this stunning beauty?" And that's when Li Yannian delivered his finishing move, "Your Majesty, she is none other than my sister." Just like that, Ladyley became an imperial consort. A brother like that, one poem, and his sister's life was changed forever. Unlike other concubines who fought fiercely for the emperor's favor, Ladyley lived gracefully and effortlessly in the palace. She was beautiful, gentle, intelligent, and talented in music. More importantly, she knew how to maintain her value. While other concubines played weak and pitiful to gain sympathy, Ladyley remained elegant and composed, never begging for affection. And that was exactly why Emperor Wu cherished her even more. The more mysterious, the more alluring. The secret to keeping a man? Never let him think he can keep you forever. Unfortunately, fate never grants anyone everything, and Ladyley was no exception. At the peak of her favor and happiness, she fell gravely ill. Emperor Wu was devastated and ordered the best imperial physicians to treat her. But without modern medicine, her condition only worsened. Realizing that she would not survive, Lady Li made one final request, a request that showcased her wisdom and dignity. "Your Majesty, if I pass away, please do not come to see me in this frail state." At first, Emperor Wu refused. "How could I do that? I love you, I want to see you one last time." But in the end, Lady Li stood firm. And just as she had planned, she ensured that the emperor would always remember her at her most beautiful. In the end, Lady Li passed away. And Emperor Wu, the man who had once insisted on seeing her one last time, decided not to go. Yes, a sudden change of heart. He realized that if he saw her in that state, he might not be able to preserve the perfect image of her in his mind. From that moment on, every time he thought of Lady Li, he was filled with endless regret. He even ordered artists to paint her portrait, gazing at it every day to keep her memory alive. A love that came too late, yet remained eternal. Lady Li did not get to spend a lifetime with Emperor Wu, but she earned something just as powerful, his undying longing and regret. And in her own way, that was a victory. Among hundreds of concubines, only one woman remained unforgettable in the emperor's heart, Lady Li. Why? Because men may forget quickly, but if a woman leaves a deep enough impression, they will regret her forever. The stories of these three women in Emperor Wu's life are not just tales of love and heartbreak. They are proof of the brutal reality of the imperial palace. Love may be real, but power and time can change everything. And above all, no matter how great an emperor may be, he can never truly conquer love. Perhaps being a mighty ruler also means being lonely at the top, and when old age comes, looking back at the women he once loved and lost, perhaps Emperor Wu could only sigh and say, "If I could go back, I would still love them. But I would change my mind a little less."